All right. Welcome, everyone. We are back for another session of One Love HTX, Whosoever's HTX here in H-Town. So we've got a crazy show planned today with a special guest I'm going to introduce here in just a second. But, of course, as normal, let you know what's coming up. We've got May 14th at Wildcatter Saloon again at a wonderful bar. We got music going down, 4 bands, Seventh Day Slumber, Decipher Down, Spoken, Amongst the Giants, and then Austin Carlisle from Of Mice and Men. The original lead singer is going to be out there. We're going to be raffling off guitars and all kinds of craziness. We're going to have a blast. So we got more of those coming. So go to onelovehtx.org for more scheduling and info. And also just talking too, we're praying through some stuff right now. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, of ways y'all can partner with us in praying over some crazy ideas that two crazy guys have.
I just want to point out, you just did that whole intro without a teleprompter or notes.
Who needs teleprompters?
That's amazing. You just went through this whole litany, and there's nothing to look at. I was like, where's the end? Comma, a period, nothing.
Is what it is. We're just coming together, having a good time. So I want to introduce. I always want to get this, like, I want to make this like French or crazy, like Jevon.
Yeah.
But it's Jevon Barnes, noble poet. So welcome, Jevon.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Super thankful to be here, and just see what our man upstairs wants to do today. And I've always had this theory that our pain has a purpose, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our king's pain had a purpose. And that purpose is for us to be free, and so he uses things that we go through our unbeknowing or knowing our decision making. He uses all things for the greater of not only his good but our good as well, and for the well-being and benefit of others. So as traumatizing it is, I've probably done I can't even count how many podcasts, but I've always been the one that's after the one, and I've had this theory inside of me that, the 99 in the corral that are being taken care of by the shepherd, the shepherd will, that's not even a theory. It's more of like more of a motto, where when I read this, when I first got saved, I was like, look, if you use my life to go get the one, then everything that I'm doing has value. Everything that I'm doing is worth it, because one can change a nation. One can change a legacy. Wow. One can influence a whole generation's bloodline to be transformed and changed. And so I've been watching the ripple effect of what's been happening with what my story is, and how it's helping. I got 65-year-old ladies in Finland that are like, I don't even listen to hip hop music, but your stories are changing my life, right? So it's kind of it's interesting on the ears that are prepared to hear, and the eyes that are ready to see on what he wants to do. And so whenever I get an opportunity like this, I'm geared up and ready. So
that's so cool. Well, I tell you, when I first heard your story, I was driving. You were on the Ryan Reese show, good buddy of ours too, and I had to pull the car over because I was like, this is unreal. This is crazy. I had to just really go through it. So we're gonna dive into that, but and I want you to really just share with people the depth of that story. It needs to be heard. But one of the questions that I had that I wanted you to add to this, because it was my question in my head that I have to ask you. You talked about your mom. I'll let you talk about that and how her prayer for 20 years for your father and stuff. But what was your upbringing like in the church or anything? While your mom's doing all that, where were you before all the chaos that you're about to get into?
Yeah.
What did that look like? Did you have something, or did you just nothing there?
Well, I did. And some people have a biblical belief on this or not. There's doctrinal difference, but I was speaking in tongues at like 3, and wow. I almost got kicked out of school when I was in kindergarten because the parents were filing complaints to the principal because I was laying hands on kids at school, and they were getting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. This is the first podcast that I've actually talked about that, and you actually just brought this to life. But I'll tell you a quick story. So my cat, I'm like 4 years old, right? And my cat's foaming at the mouth. It's got leukemia, and I remember this because the cat's going to die. I mean, it's convulsing. It's messed up, right? And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, Jesus is going to heal my cat, and I'm going to lay hands on it right now, and this cat's going to be healed. And this is me as a little kid, right? And my mom did not really get where, I mean, she got it, but she was like, how does a 4-year-old child understand this kind of stuff? And I kid you not, man, I laid hands on that cat. That cat was healed the next morning. And that was kind of this is where my mom is always, she's always been like, you were born on 7/7/77 for a reason. You're God's chosen number. Like that is who you are. And so, going through the abuse, the mass amounts of just physical, mental, emotional, verbal, the whole 9 yards, it's almost like in Jeremiah 1 where he says, I knew you before you were in the womb, and he had sent me here on an assignment, is kind of what I'm starting to put the pieces together, even being 20 years deep into following the Lord. But I don't think any of this is by chance. And so
that's incredible. So that was age 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then, wow. So then what happened? So that goes into the story then.
Kind of, I started to, my mom is extremely prophetic. I mean, I'm talking like she won't even meet somebody and won't even know them, and she'll read the paint off. I mean, she literally will read their mail. My mom is like on a whole nother hemisphere. She's just, I've never met anybody like her before. And I know that she hears from the Lord because she's been so accurate hundreds of times. Well, in the 80s, that was not very accepted in the church. So I developed this like hardness and bitterness because, she would have a word, for leadership, and it would be contradictory. It wasn't ear itching, and it would be contradictory to their mentality. They would kick her out. And then, I hear a story 10 to 15 years later, the pastor finds her, tracks her down, and says, that word was exactly accurate. Had I listened to you, I wouldn't have lost my whole congregation.
Oh, wow.
Things like that were continually happening. So I just started to develop a hardness towards pastors, to the point where by the time I was like 12 or 13, if you even talked to me about God, I was going to split your wig back. Like, don't bring that even around me at all. Like that, this is what's brutalized. So I was watching my mom get brutalized by, pastors and leaders, but then also watching my mom get brutalized by my dad. So I really didn't trust men at all, and unless they were under me in my organization. And that was a fear-driven type of mentality that we had. It was respect and fear at the same time, but mostly fear. So,
so with that, you say probably around 12 or 13, you started to kind of, as we do, I guess, walk away, but God's not walking away from us. Yeah.
I mean, I was a star athlete growing up. I was getting scouted when I was 14 years old. I remember when I was a freshman, I was batting 408, and I was just a really great athlete. It was something that I was born with, that I actually didn't have to try to be great at. I was just born with it. And that was beaten out of me as well. I had the emotional development of, at the age 20, I probably had about the emotional development about a 9 or 10-year-old.
Wow.
So I was getting straight A's. I was in all honors classes. And by the time I was, a freshman, something in me, I remember the day it happened, I was on the baseball field and something just snapped in me. But, it started with the not having a name growing up. My name was Nimrod, which, or effing idiot, or, the P word that people use, right?
I'm trying. Is that as far back as you can remember?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to cry as a child. And it was, for me, I was terrified. Mm-hmm. My dad's my size. He's a little shorter than me. I'm almost 6'3", but at the time he was, I don't know if I've ever seen my dad under 250 pounds. So by the time I was, 10, 11, 12 years old, he was probably 325. So he's a big boy, and super, super scary when, I remember this time when we didn't have, so Never Fit In, the song is talking about cockroaches running all over the floor, no hot water, broken doors. We had no hot water in our house. and my dad was out getting drunk, and my mom had to heat up. At the churches they have those commercial sized tea kettles that hold. Right? My mom had to heat up the water in those tea kettles, and what she would do is fill half the tub up with cold water and then dump the hot water in to make it warm, right? And my dad comes home and I don't know, man. I was a little kid. I was probably 4 years old, but I have to imagine it was in between 2 and 4 in the morning. And he comes slamming through the door for some reason, thinking that there's going to be like a hot bath prepared for him or something. And I'm dead asleep. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, where is that little effing blah, blah, blah. He took all the hot water, and I got up and I'm under, I find a way to get under my, it was either my dresser or my bunk bed. And I'm sitting under there, just completely terrified, thinking, not knowing what's going to happen. And, that didn't stop. The beatings were so severe. It wasn't like spankings, you spare the rod, you spoil the child.
Right.
So, like spanking, it was like that, that's just a little recorrection. But when you're taking, steel hangers and, I think I told on Ryan's podcast that we didn't get our steel overseas in the 80s. Mm-hmm. It was made here. I don't know if you guys remember, but everything was made with quality back then. Dressers weighed 200-300 pounds. So the hangers were 4 times as thick as they are now. Now you can bend them and
right.
That's how hangers were back then, man. So he would, straighten those things out and just lash the out of me, and that was the graduating point, because he started with a belt that would, I'd get 20 lashings with that, and then he moved, because that wouldn't affect me no more. Then he moved to a smash ball paddle that had, when we were kids, the smash ball paddles had a steel rim around them, the table tennis paddles, right? And the steel was probably a little bit over a 1/4 inch thick, and it wrapped around the wood. Well, that steel, when it hits you, man, it's metal. It's not wood. And so then that didn't hurt me no more. Then it started to graduate to the coat hangers. So, and it would be for stuff that I have a 10-year-old son. I've raised my voice at him one time at a place where I raised my voice to a level where I was actually angry with him. And that's been one time in 3,650 days of him being alive, right? I just don't operate that way, because I know what it did to me. And if I wasn't getting beaten, the yelling was so intense and so loud, and it would be this far away from my face, and I'd have these fingers hitting me as a little, and I think that's why that street mentality came out of me, because if anybody touched me, adversely, once I learned the street game, I was known for just grabbing people's faces and literally taking them and smashing them into my forehead, and not feeling anything. I was very violent in regards to how I handled situations. And, I look back, I'm well, he used to take these big, huge, feather blankets, and he would smother me in them so I couldn't breathe. And he would hold them down, and I'd be inside of I didn't talk about this on the Ryan show, but he would hold me down and suffocate me, and I couldn't breathe. So whenever I felt like anybody was in my space to violate, I would get triggered. That trauma would trigger. And there were things that, fights that I would get in, and I blacked out. People are pulling me off, and this dude's already been knocked out 8-9 punches prior. And I'm kicking this guy in the mouth and not even realizing what I'm doing. The trauma was that bad. And so, God, wow. I was really soft as like I said, I was, healing kids at school. God was healing kids through me. I wasn't healing anybody, but, I was really soft and very loving. And I remember by the time I was about 8 years old, it broke, and I turned very, very hardened, and the abuse there was nothing I could do for my father. That my brother was up here a couple weeks ago, and we went out to the baseball field, and I kid you not, I was throwing lines from center field all the way to home plate, and at 44 years old, and the ball's not even skipping straight to the. I mean, my brother's just like, dude, I don't even know how. I've never. This is just. He couldn't. He's just like, man, I don't get you, bro. Like I just had this amazing gift, and you know, I can't blame that. I mean, I can kind of, if I want to, blame it on my dad, but I made my choices. I hit the streets, and you know, once I found a way to medicate that what I thought was filling that vile pit of trauma, pain, unforgiveness, it was just like a relentless mechanism. And I remember the first time I took a 40 to my mouth, it felt like a golden elixir was going through my whole body, and I didn't feel any more pain, right? And I already had generational alcoholism from my dad being an alcoholic drug addict. My grandma, his mom, drank herself to death at 56. So there was lineal stuff that was already, you know, passed on, right? So I put that in me, and you know, after freshman year in high school, I hit the streets, and I had a couple $100 in my backpack. I don't remember the exact amount. Actually, it was, you know, enough for me to learn the street game, and I learned that pretty quickly. You know, the problem though with Fresno, actually it's a problem everywhere, is you got haters, and I was really good with people. I always have been, and I didn't never short people when I sold drugs. Everybody always got the amount that they paid for, and blah blah blah. And so a lot of people in Fresno don't do that. So, you know, I constantly keep rising up, and every time I rise up, you know, I'm sleeping on the ground in a bathroom, or you know, over these electrical power plant, the brick walls that are around those. I jump those and sleep on the other side of that, anywhere where I felt like I was safe. But then people in Fresno, they would find out where I was at. It's like
what age was that? So you said you left the house. What age? 15?
15, 16, yeah, somewhere. Yeah, 15.
And my understanding is you didn't look back. You didn't.
No, there was no
any contact with mom.
My mom would somehow find one of my friends' numbers or something and figure out, if I was like over at my friend's house, like, oh, my mom would actually get a phone call and be like, he's over here. She'd call and be like, you know what she did? I remember this. This is the first time I talked about this too. So I'm like 16 years old, and my mom goes, I had a vision and a dream about you. And I was like, I mean, I'm just hardened. I don't even care. I'm like, whatever, and he's still trying to, preach the gospel to me. And she goes, I had this vision that you were in this massive stadium, and you were preaching the gospel, and you were doing music.
What?
I was like, that's a bunch of garbage. I was like, I don't even do music. I don't write music. I don't play an instrument. I don't even know. I'm a baseball player, and now I'm a drug addict. I'm a drug dealer. You know what I mean? That's really was my hardened response to her. And so she had that when I was a teenager, but that is what had kept my mom praying for me from, the age of 15 until 26. I went hard on the paint for, 11 years straight. And, I ended up rising up so quickly, and I started connecting with people at a deep level. And I was working with, certain Latin groups, Mexicans in Fresno. So I had connections with those people, but that's where I was getting that, the cheap brickweed, and just learned the drug game in Fresno. And by the time I think I'm 17, I have my own apartment. That apartment got robbed, right? And there was helicopters above the apartment. And the problem is at that time, my pager was probably, and this is old enough to have pagers, but I was getting, it was literally 24 hours a day. And I was seeing my apartment was like New Jack City. I don't know if you guys ever seen that movie.
Oh yeah. I remember that. I remember that. And also you're saying pagers is so funny, because did you have like 3 of them?
Yeah. So, in the 90s, that was kind of the thing. I actually wish we still had them, because it'd be a lot easier just to call people back when they page instead of,
right. Or do the little, the hello or whatever those.
Yeah. this is what I would get on my pagers. I would get 911. Well, what's the 911? It's not an emergency that you need drugs. I'll get to you when I want to. You know what I mean? Like it's like 3:30 in the morning. I'm not going out. I'm not coming out to meet you to drop a dime. Like I'm not. You're not 911ing me for a 10 cent. It's not how that's working. So, I was moving the bricks. I'd buy a pound at a time and then flip it, go to 2 pounds. Well, every time I'd start to make a bunch of money, I'd get robbed, either when I was sleeping on the ground or when I moved into my apartment. Well, my roommate at the time, he got tied up. I wasn't there, and I got robbed. They got nearly everything, and then the cops, they raided my house. But because of the fact that there was nothing there, what are you going to charge? Once again, what are you going to charge me with? Like, I remember having some stems and some seeds, and because I would pull the stems out of the bricks before I would sell it, because I didn't want people, complaining about having stems and seeds. So I just remove it. And I was like, "You're going to charge me with stems and seeds?" And they're like, "Well, technically we can't." And
this is a legit business.
and so they left. And that's when I knew. I was like, you know what? I knew in my head, I'm like, I'm bigger than this place. I knew that inside of me. I knew I was bigger than Fresno. And I knew I had something to where if I was in the right place, I could do a lot better. So, after lots of research and figuring out, okay, where's all the AAA weed grown at? Where's it all grown at? Where's it coming from? Everybody wants it. At the time, it was $60 an eighth. I'm like, I need to go there. And everybody's like, Humboldt County. It's in the middle of nowhere, though. It's all the way up north, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going. So I had I think at the time, it's like $420, $480, just a little amount of money. That's all I had left. And I went up there on a hope and a whim. And I remember pulling into Humboldt County, and my friend actually drove me up there. And right when I pulled in my head, I was like, 6 months to a year, I'm going to own everything and everybody. That's what I thought in my head. I was like, I'm going to take this place over. And the way I viewed it was, this place is soft. That's how I viewed it. I was like, I've been sleeping on the ground, working with gangsters, like real people that are, got trunks of guns, like crazy heavy hitters. And most of them are dead or in prison for life. A lot of the Mexicans that I was working with. But I was like, if I could rise up in that game in Fresno, I was like, I'm going to take this place over. And sure enough, I mean, within, it might maybe been a year, maybe 18 months, it just grew so fast. Wow. And then everybody in Fresno starts to find out, oh, wait a second, Jevon's got the plug. He's got the connection for the AAA. Well, right. Then the orders start coming in, right? So I've got, people from Fresno. I got connections down in San Diego, LA. I mean, all the way, some big people at the time, it wasn't legal in Colorado. So people were coming from Colorado. I mean, it was just, again, it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing and growing at a very, very rapid, fast pace, to where I think by the time I must have been 20 or 21. I remember my driver, she was like, you realize you just moved $500,000 in less than an hour?
Jeez.
And so what happened? Wow. We got the golden boy. So then other brokers from other growers from other mountains. So you got like Alder Point, which is right by Murder Mountain. You got Bridgeville. You got, all these areas in Southern Humboldt. Well, my driver had a lot of connections with all those people, and they just knew I could move it so fast. They just front it to her. She'd drive it down. I'd rent out a hotel, pay off the front guy at the hotel, load everybody up with their weeds or whatever they, with weed, money, take the hotel over. And it was a high-end hotel, like a 5-star, back then it was $600 a night just for one hotel room. Right. So I got the place ran like the gosh darn Carter House in New Jack City, where the front's covered. My guys are coming in with their money. I'm walking in with, my duffel bags were like, you could fit a body in them, and they were just vacuum sealed with pounds to make sure that there was no smell. Right. Well, I have just people come through. Yo, I'm taking 100 grand here. I got 80 grand here. Boom, 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 boom. And man, I just clean the load out, go pay out the driver, take the brokerage fee, and then party for like, 3 days in Frisco and just live like I was a gosh darn rock star. And so
right.
We were doing that like 3 times a month. And then I had 5 houses that I was growing at, right? I had my brother running one of my houses. I had my cousin running one of my houses. And then I owned a glass manufacturing operation where I had a really, really high-end custom glass shop. I had the nicest glass shop in Northern California. I had a delivery truck, full screen printing business attached to it. And this was all.
So that's the legit stuff happening right there. So I wondered about that when you were talking about glass business in the last podcast. What it like when you said high-end glass, like what was that?
Yeah, we were making really, really expensive handmade glass bongs. And those would run. So I had what's called a lathe, and it is a scientific, just that lathe was like 30 grand. So, and I learned from some of the best glass blowers in the world. So I've got 10 guys under me. I'm the head designer. I'm the one running the lathe. I train other people to run the lathe. And then I'm bringing in some of the most famous glass blowers in the world to come to my glass shop. And then eventually I ended up moving them to Humboldt County. I set them up with a grow house. And then some of these guys were, you're talking, some of their pieces were, thousands of dollars. So
wow,
it's really strange when I talk about this stuff because I'm like 44 now and I'm thinking about where I was when I was 22. What 22-year-old kid can have this type of leadership capability? Right. What kind of 22-year-old kid would have this much influence, right? And so what I've processed over time was I had God's favor on me way before I understood what favor was. I was just using it for the wrong kingdom, right?
I was just about to say that. Sorry, I knew
that's what I was just going to say. Is like what I'm hearing is leadership.
Yeah,
I'm hearing entrepreneurial thinking, business savvy. I mean, it is really amazing the skill set you were blessed with. Mm-hmm. And at this point in the story, it's hard to imagine that it could have taken the turn that it did. I mean, it's just
it's
incredible.
And so, and you had a daughter. Was your daughter involved at this time yet? Was she?
She was born 8/29/98. She's getting her PhD now, but I had her when I just turned 21. So yeah, she was in the thick of. I mean, she was born in the midst of like right at the height of when the organization was happening, and when I tell people, what's crazy because I've kind of got some. I don't want to say backlash, but some people are like, well, this kid was making, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a month. No, I wasn't making $1 million to $2 million to $3 million a month. I was selling that much every month. I was getting a broker fee on that, right? So usually I'd make about $8,000 an hour. Like, and I'd do that for 3-4 hours, make what I was going to make, and then go do it again. And so there's not the profitability was the growers. They were the ones that making all the money. I was making 100, 200, 300, 400 a pound, but when you move 100 of them at $200 profit on each one, that's 20 grand in, an hour's worth of work or whatever. So, I don't want to, the thing about when I do this stuff, I don't ever want to glamorize what I was doing or make it seem like, I don't ever want to over exaggerate things. I can't stand when people do that because that's not where the truth is. The truth is I had a ton of money coming in that never stopped. And then I started, a lot of the people from Fresno, some of them were attached to the cartel. Well, that cartel, they started buying like 200 G's a month, right? Well, they were like, well, you're moving all this. We're going to bring you up, try some of our product, right? And it was, it's just AAA Peruvian flake cocaine. And I didn't sell coke. And I also did not realize the level of pain that I was in. Once I got my hands on mixing pills, cocaine, acid, dimethyltryptamine, I would mix all those things at the same time. And the cocaine was really like, what kind of set everything kind of the beginning of the spiral. But, I think it's important before we go to the spiral, like, I think people need to understand that actually the level of what I was involved in. I had connections with MDMA chemists. I had connections with people who are attached to the real Merry Pranksters, the real Grateful Dead family. And they pulled a drum, like a big, huge drum filled with liquid fluff out of the ground. I actually got a call from an old grower that I knew, and he hit me up on Facebook. He's like, that's crazy. That's crazy, because I knew about that drum that got brought out of the ground. And I remember when fluff re-hit, the streets again. And it was literally buried from, the early 80s. And I had thousands of hits LSD in my freezer. I had a chunk of that orange dimethyltryptamine in my freezer, and then an 8-ounce brick, a personal blow. And then I was getting medical grade nitrous tanks from a crooked dentist, right? So and then I've got, at least 100 grand worth of weed in a duffel bag sitting in my closet. So I was like, okay, wake up, suck down a fat nitrous hit, eat a pill, chop a line, snort a line. And a lot of the time I would just have people hang me upside down. People were passed out in my house. They would hang me upside down. So I'd suck off the nitrous tank after snorting a rail, eating a pill, and then drinking Crown. So I had a bottle of Crown right next to my bed. So I was more of what they called like a master mixologist. I was like, okay, I want to mix the Xans with the Valium, with the Coke, with the L, with the dimethyltryptamine, with the weed, with the nitrous, right? And I had no limits, which was even crazier, because people would eat 1 or 2 drops of that fluff and they'd be on a whole nother realm, a whole nother hemisphere. And I'm squirting down with 50 to 100 hits constantly. It wasn't just one time I ate 50 hits. I'd take a vial and I'd squirt it all over me and then rub it on my face like a Comanche warrior. I was just on another.
This is crazy, because I've talked to my wife often, and it's funny. I was talking to Ryan about this one of the first times I met him, and I told Ryan, I said, I stayed away from the hard stuff because I saw it ruin my family in different places. And he goes, what did you do? And I said, well, I just did a lot of acid. He was like, bro, that's hard stuff. And I was like, I guess I didn't think about it that way. But hearing your story, going through that too, my wife, I have to ask her often. I'm like, are you sure I'm not messed up? Because I run into some people sometimes that did as much as I did or more than I did, and they're just not normal anymore. And thank God you sound normal, you look normal. It's wow, God's hand.
I can't believe you're alive.
Right.
I'm kind of blown away right now.
Yeah, bro. So we'll fast forward for a second. So I get after we'll go into the hard stuff, but so this is post everything and me changing my life. I'm running on a treadmill one day, and at the time I'm running probably, 40 to 60 miles a week, right? And I kid you not, I heard the Lord loud as day. He goes, do you find it interesting that you still have all your teeth in your mouth? Do you find it interesting that you didn't have one cavity? Do you find it interesting that you don't look the same age as a lot of the people that you were partying with? Do you find it? And he started going down the whole list with me, and I'm just weeping while I'm running. He goes, I have put a hedge of protection around your life so no weapon formed against you will prosper. That's what he told me. He protected me from all of it. I mean, I should look like I'm 80 years old. You should see some of the guys that I was partying with. They look like they're, I've had people walk up to me and ask me if I'm in my early 30s. I literally had that happen several times over the last 6 months. And, it's just crazy what God can do. But in the midst of my medication, what really triggered it off, I actually had a dream, but it wasn't a dream. It was a flashback to a molestation that happened. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, I woke up and I was in complete trauma. I didn't know what was going on. It didn't feel like I was even on the earth. I was not in a good place. Like, I don't want to say suicidal, but I just didn't want to be here anymore, essentially. Yeah. And so I was like, well, how can we take it to the next level? Like, this isn't enough. That's what I thought in my head. So we started rolling chewy blunts. So we would take, we take an 8-ball or a 1/4 ounce, cook all the impurities out of it, and chop that base up and put it on blunts, right? So we're rolling down $300 to $500 blunts a couple times a day, and that was the beginning essentially of the end, because once I was mixing base and then sorting coke and oxycontin at the same time as well, which is a speedball essentially. And I'm still smoking dimethyltryptamine, and I'm still eating volumes. I mean, I had a bag of Xanax that was like, I mean, the real Xanax bars, not those stupid little footballs. I'm talking like the real deal Holyfields. And it was like, okay,
wow,
I'm gonna see how far I can actually take this, right? And one night I was smoking dimethyltryptamine. We had already smoked at least one chewy blunt, snorted a bunch of coke. I was on a ton of LSD. I mean, I puddled myself. And what else was I on that night? Crown, weed, pills, dimethyltryptamine, acid. Oh, and I was on MDMA too. I had done a we get the raw MDMA and roll my finger in it like those dip candies from when you were a kid, and I just stick my whole thumb in my mouth, and that was probably at least, I don't know, 15, 20 hits of ecstasy, right?
Wow.
And I'm on my back deck, and I'm chuffing big old fat dimethyltryptamine hit, and I'm sitting, and all of a sudden I could feel my heart like not beating. I was like, I'm gonna die, and I'm leaning up against the side of my deck, and I'm like creeping up around the side, and all of a sudden I see a herd of demons come out of, because I had a private estate, private property out of the redwoods, and I saw like a herd of demons coming out of the woods, and they were swarming their way towards me. And I mean, I literally was just like, God, something came over me in that moment where I knew I was going to die. And God was like, God, like, please forgive me, like, for everything that I've done. And I was crying, and I knew it was time. Like I was done. Well, sure enough, my gosh darn dog, I had a French Mastiff that guarded my property. He came running out of the house and started swarming around me, freaking out. I mean, I'm talking, I've never seen a dog freak out like this. And those demons are trying to come at me. And it looked like he was almost like a battle warrior sent to protect me. And I kid you not, after that happened, all those demons fled, and I was instantly sober. Whoa. Instantly sober, dude. Like nothing had ever happened to me before. It's like I'd never even done a drug. I felt, Psalm 51, I felt like I've been washed white as snow. That's what it felt like to me. When I look back, I'm like, it felt like I got dipped in holy water or something, and I'm completely sober. Well, I'm done. Go ahead.
Was that your first time, like in a long time, that you ever had a conversation with God since?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really genuinely the start of me wondering, is God really real? And in that moment, I became sober, and I started to realize that there was something greater than me that was calling my life. I felt it, and after that point, I mean, I was on doing my next thing again the next day.
Yeah,
it's not like
did you? I remember you saying on Ryan's show that at one point you're seeing the demons. And the next day could have been, it was the high, but because of your dogs don't see demons. I remember you saying that.
Right.
Did all that come back to you? Did you remember all that?
I did. The thing, what kept bringing me back to it is I realized that like I said on Ryan's show, I would never give any animal drugs, but I did not give my dog any LSD. I did not give my dog any MDMA. I did not give my dog any dimethyltryptamine. It's impossible for a dog to smoke dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah, and the chances of them seeing the same thing, even if you did, was impossible. So totally God.
Absolutely impossible. And so I woke up the next day though, man. I'm clean and white as snow. It felt like I was 4 or 5 years old again. I was like, how? And I'm processing because I'm sober and I'm not on drugs. So I'm processing everything that just happened. Yeah. But then the next day, the pain was still there. That dream is or that flashback is what annihilated me. And so, or I allowed it to annihilate me instead of knowing what to do at the time, which was, pray and forgive. And next day I'm doing the same thing. And it wasn't much longer. It was probably within 2 or 3 months, due to the fact that we were smoking chewies. And when you're mixing that hard, narcotic with pills, I started to work with people that were affiliates of others that I actually did not really know. I had a really tight knit crew. Like I would have people just walk in with 2 duffel bags, just drop $250,000 on the ground and walk out and say, I'll see you in a week. Well, all those people were out. I'd already cleaned everybody out. And it was the dry season in Humboldt County. It gets real dry. There's not a lot of product in August and September because the outdoor harvest comes in October. So I'm like, I got a feeding frenzy on my hands, right? I mean, the phone's not stopping ringing, and the prices are going up because it's dry. Well, they're like, man, we'll pay $200-300 more a pound, and my dollar sign's just going off in my head. Like, oh my gosh, I can make, this dude buys 20 at $300 more a pound. That's $6,000 on top of the original profit that I was already making, right? So I'm in my head. I'm like, it's time to make money. So I was like making phone calls. That person made a phone call. That person made a phone call. And then it ended up with this one guy who made another phone call to a gentleman. And he was like, yeah, I got an endless supply of purple Urkel. And that was a sought after high-end purple weed at the time.
Right.
He's like, just come down to Honeydew and meet me under the bridge. And I was like, okay. So I never really done a deal with this dude before, but he seemed like he was fine. And long story short, my boy from Fresno, he calls me on the way up. He's like, man, I just scraped together. I have enough money for gas and food to get home. We got, I think he had 138,500 in the trunk. And he was like, I'm tapped. He's like, but if we make this one work, it's going to be an endless summer. And I was like, okay. So he shows up in his rent-a-car. I'm standing there with the guy who's supposed to have the load, right?
Yeah.
And he don't got the weed, and my friend. It's hard to talk about this stuff sometimes, especially because I'm about to film the video that's going through the music video that's going through all this, and we're doing it actually at the murder scene. So forgive me if I seem like my brain gets foggy. It's just so traumatic talking about this. But my friend pulls up, and he trusted me, and I trusted him. We'd never done each other dirty, and we never would because we were both making so much money.
Right.
Well, the guy gets in the situation, and he acts like he's taking a cell phone call. And he goes, oh, we got to go inland 5 miles. And I go, dude, we got to go inland? What do you do? It's supposed to be here. Like, this is the plan. And I just had my, my friend just drove all the way up from Fresno.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
sketch.
Yeah, it's getting, and I already knew it was getting, I felt it. And he's like, yeah, we got to go inland. And so he's like, hey, but I need to see money first because I'm not going inland without seeing the money. And I looked at him and I go, bro, dude, do you know who the F I am? Everybody knows who I am. And I come correct, all counted, hundreds, on spot. I just started laying into him with just my pride and my ego, just like thrashing this guy. And I was like, I told my friend, I said, man, pop the trunk, show him the money. Pop the trunk. Boom. Exactly the way I said it was. He's like, all right, let's go inland. So I get into the passenger seat. My friend is in the driver's seat. And the guy who's supposed to bring us in to get the load, I can't say names because it's just going to be. And so
I don't want to know names.
Yeah, you know my name. That's enough. So the guy who's supposed to take us to get to the load, right when my friend went like this, and I heard the car getting ready to start. Boom, boom! Shoots my friend. The guy's in the back seat. Shoots my friend twice in the back of the head. Right, and immediately PTSD, like immediate shock. Like I understand now what Vietnam veterans and war veterans go through because it was so close to my head. My ears are immediately ringing, and I'm like, God! And the door's locked, and I can't get out of the gosh darn car. And when the door's locked, when I'm trying to get out of the car, I'm like, so imagine the guy behind me. I'm like this, right? and I can see him out of the corner of my eye as he's trying to unjam the gun. Right, he's trying to finish me off. Right, he double homicide.
Right.
I get out of the car, and I just start running, and
thank God for the athleticism.
Huh?
Thank God for the athleticism at this point.
Exactly.
But I could book. And so this is interesting. I didn't talk about this on Ryan's show either. This is really weird. I'll tell you this. So I live 45 minutes up north, right? Mm-hmm. I felt something in me, and I know what it was now. It wasn't even a feeling. I actually heard this overwhelming sense of, it was like I started to hear, after I got sober, I started to hear a voice that wasn't mine, and that's when I thought that I was going crazy. Mm-hmm. And but I literally heard it and felt it at the same time. Put on your cargo pants and put on a hoodie. And I was like, man, it's going to be 95 degrees down in southern Humboldt County, because up in northern Humboldt, it was only like 72, 75 degrees. Down southern Humboldt, it gets warm because it's in the hills. That's how the weeds growing. Yeah. And I just did it. Well, that was the Holy Spirit talking to me, because as I'm running, right, under that 101 strip area right there is all blackberry vines. Oh. I took my hood and I pulled it over my head and I tied a hole around it where you could barely see my eyes. And then I took the bottom of my cargos and pulled them over my ankles, or pulled it over the top of my shoe and cinched it. If I wouldn't have obeyed, because I was going to wear shorts and a t-shirt,
right,
I would have been, I would have been cut up head to toe. So I was like navigating through. I mean, I'm talking like, it must have been miles of blackberry bushes that were sitting under the 101. Well, I navigated through those vines and I found a hole in the ground, right? And I'm sitting in the hole because I think the guy's going to come to chase me down. Well, right. I come to find out he threw my friend for dead on the ground, stole our rent-a-car with the money in the trunk, and left my friend for dead on the ground right after he'd just been shot twice in the head.
Jeez.
I'm in this hole. And this is when I heard, and you know what? I don't care what anybody says on this planet. They can argue with me as much as they got darn want and say, God's not real, da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. I was sitting in that hole, and it was the same voice that told me to wear my sweatshirt and my cargos. Said, I have a call, a plan, a purpose, and a destiny for your life. When are you going to start working for him and start working for me? And I was like, I'm out. I'm done. You get me out of this, I'm out the game. I'm out. I will commit my life to you. I will follow you for the rest of my life. That's what I told him in that hole. And I kid you not, within 2 to 5 minutes, I creep up out of the hole and get to the edge of the 101, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the redwoods. People don't stop on this road. It is the 101 North. If anybody's been, who's watching this or whatever, anybody who's driven through the Avenue of the Giants knows it's not a frequent stop place unless you're actually in the Avenue of the Giants doing the tourist stuff, which I was not near.
Yeah.
I creep up to the edge and I'm on my knees praying, and an old Suburban pulls up, opens the door, and says, I'm a rabbi. Where do you need to go?
What?
And I go, like a rabbi from the Bible. That's what I said. I was like, and I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Like, this is real. Like, God is real. That's what needed to happen to wake me up to realize that God is real. That it had to get that traumatic because of the hardness that I discussed earlier about watching my mom get brutalized by the church. Religion is nasty. Religion will actually corrupt you to such a deep level. There's no freedom in it. And so I view God as the same religious stuff that my mom was getting annihilated with, right?
Right.
That's not Yahweh. That's not Yeshua. It's not. He's not a God of religion. He's a God of love, and he loved me enough to save my life. Well, so gun jams, boom, rabbi picks me up. Takes me 45 minutes up north to the edge of the Eureka 101. And on the way, I look out the window, I'm like, oh my God. Cops. I couldn't even count them. There were so many. Coming up and down 101 North, 101 South. I mean, I'm talking, they're going like 120 miles an hour. Helicopters. I'm like, oh, I done it now. We're in trouble. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm alive, but I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm effed. I'm screwed. Get to the edge of the 101, because the 101 has to go through Eureka to get back up to my house. And Rabbi goes, the 101's blocked off. You can't get through without getting your car inspected. And the rabbi goes, I can't justifiably, you have to make a statement. You have to. I was like, all right. So street game in my head, right? Street game in my head is drugs never showed up, money's gone. Back to where I was, what happened in my apartment in Fresno? What are they going to arrest me for? There's nothing to arrest me for. What, a drug deal gone bad? What are you going to arrest me for that? Like, so I told him what happened. I said, our car got jacked. My friend got shot in the head. I almost got murdered. Here I am. That's essentially what I told them.
Right.
And they were like, okay, Mr. Barnes, go. They let me go. Went back up to Northern Humboldt. That guy drove me all the way to the front door of my property. Not to the edge of my gate, because I had a private gate. He drove me all the way up through, dropped me off, and that's when the real games begin, because unbeknowing, I'm trying to break everything down. Keep in mind, I got 6 houses I'm growing at. I got a glass manufacturing operation. I got drivers. I mean, there's a lot of people relying on me. There's a lot of people's lives that have invested years of their life into this organization that we had built. Like, even though I was running it, everybody else was still like making tons of money, man. Everybody around me that came around me, nobody wanted for nothing. Right. Everybody was not just, they were thriving through the worldly standpoint. But so I couldn't break it down fast enough, man. I just had too much. I mean, I probably had 50, 60, 70 lights that were running, and let me see. Yeah, about 50, between 50 and 70 lights. That's a lot of lights that are having, weed grown under them. And, my brother's involved. His whole livelihood's attached to this. My cousin's involved. His whole livelihood's attached to this. See, I paid the rent on all the houses, and then they got half the harvest. They got half the harvest for running the house. Well, what about my driver? She's going to lose her golden boy that's moving, minimal. I mean, this is on a crappy month, $1 million a month. That's gone. All these other connections of all these people that were on this mountains that needed to move their weed, that's gone, right? So it's just a huge mess. I couldn't break it down in 2 weeks. Just wasn't enough time. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to get out, but I got to get out at my pace, not God's pace. Even though I had just told him I'm out, right? I was like, well, I'm going to harvest my weed that's on my property. I'm going to harvest my stuff at all the houses. I'm going to go sell it all, and then I'll be done, right? No, that's not
doesn't work that way.
You don't get to make a commitment with your life and then tell God you're going to do it the way you want to do it. That's not even. I mean, now that's just spiritual stupidity. Yeah. But at the time, I thought that's what I could do. So I got girls in my house trimming down on the weed, right? And I'm trying to get these plants trimmed up. I got them hanging upstairs in my loft and drying everything. And I got one of the girls in the living room, and she goes, Jevon, there's 2 men down right now at the gate, and they got badges on their belts. I was like, oh my God, clean it up, get everything put away. I'm screaming. And the guys are standing out at the edge of the gate. Well, then they walk through the gate. They like, because my gate was locked. They like kind of, it was like a corral, a cattle gate. So they kind of, shimmied their way through, and they walk up. I come and meet them halfway down the driveway, right? And I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they're like, you Jevon Barnes? And I go, yeah, I'm Jevon Barnes. And they go, well, we're Vegas FBI. And I was like, Vegas FBI? Like, we're investigating a murder. And I was like, murder? Like the murder that just almost happened to me and my friend? And they're like, no, the gunman who shot your friend in the head twice and tried to kill you, we just found him in a dumpster, dead, canoed with a 45 is what they told me. They said we got split open with a 45 Desert Eagle. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a 45, but a 45 bullet will literally split the front of your head open. So they found him in a dumpster. And they believe, and this is what they said: we believe that we know this is a drug deal gone bad, and we believe that you were the one that put out the hit. And a tear rolled down my eye. And I said, I hate guns. I've never been involved with guns. And that was the truth. Yeah. I didn't feel the need to have guns, because why isn't everybody going to kill the golden boy? Why would they do that? What, for one short come up, when you can stay working with me and make 10 times that working? You know what I mean? That was my thought. Like, I thought I was untouchable. And so I kindly, not really very kindly, but I said, you guys got a warrant. And they said, no, Mr. Barnes, we don't have a warrant. And I said, then kindly get off my property.
Right.
They had to leave. I had cut them off. Halfway down my driveway, but that was only about 20 feet away from the garage that I had lights filled with, right? I had a full grow op that hadn't been broken down in there yet. And what did they do? They go then and tip off the Humboldt County Sheriff Department for my grow operation that was on my property. Okay. So those guys were on my property within 2 weeks of the shooting. Okay. Within another 30 days, I've got the sheriff and in between 35 and 40 deputies raid my house. I have my friend's Cadillac on my property, and then it had a car cover over it. And he was in the middle of something. And he had a really nice Cadillac. He's like, I got to put the Cadillac here. I trust you. Nothing will happen to it. And he was one of my buyers. He was probably $100,000 a month. So I was like, yeah, dude, no problem. He was actually the guy who was my delivery driver for my glass blowing operation as well. Right. So I was like, yeah, dude, go ahead, and then I said, hey, if you're going to store that here, I read some law that says that you actually can't get charged for something if you store a bunch of stuff in your trunk and it's not your car, it's not your property. Well, that was a law from like the late 80s, right? It actually is not law. So I put 105 pounds in that Cadillac in the trunk, and then put the car cover over the top. Right. Well, this is my daughter's, kindergarten picture day. Kid you not. Kindergarten gosh darn picture day. House gets raided. They get me I had a hash manufacturing operation. There was at the time, I think, about 3.5 pounds of hash. So hash is really hard to make. It's one of the most difficult things to actually process. And that's why you can get in so much trouble, because it's like taking the cocoa plant and turning it into cocaine, or taking the opium plant or the poppy and turning it into heroin, right? You're processing something, and then it becomes actually a really certain class felony. I'm not sure which, I don't remember now because it's been so far away, but it was a certain class of felony. So they popped me for the hash. They popped me for the grow up. They popped me for 105 pounds. And then I hadn't harvested, I think I had like 88 plants outside that were probably like 6, 7, 8 feet tall. So all that happens. Well, check this out. One of the cartels that I was working with, he calls and he's like, hey, this train ain't stopping. Like, where are we going to get, what are we going to do? He's like, I'm bringing you a gun right now. So he drove all the way, and I hate guns. I mean, now I could go hunting or, whatever. But back then I was like, I don't want no guns around, no drugs. Right. He drives a unregistered, no serial number, 9mm with hollow point bullets up to my house. Right. Well, I've got that stashed, and the bullets are separate from the gun. I don't have the gun loaded, which was, I don't even know what I was thinking at the time. I was so frazzled. Yeah. So the cops take the gun, and I'm on the front page now. Within the last like 2 months, I'm on the front page of the newspaper twice, and I'm on the news twice. So stuff's getting really, really hairy really fast. Well. Wow. Crazy thing about all this is I don't have proof of this, but there's only one way that gun disappeared. One of those sheriffs, or one of the deputies, or whatever verbiage you'd like to use, somebody on that team stole that gun, because I didn't end up getting charged with it. They took it, but I didn't get charged with it, because that's a mandatory, no matter what, under any situation, that's mandatory 5. Right off the top, 5, no matter what. That disappeared. So still to this day, I'm like, man,
wow,
how that not a legal 9mm with hollow point bullets, how'd that disappear? And God is my witness, I had never committed any type of a crime that was involved with guns at all, like even remotely. It was straight weed. That was the deal. So I get charged with the 105 pounds, hash manufacturing operation, almost 100 plants, grow up. My charges were like, that long on a page, about 8 inches. And I go to my first court date, and they're like, yeah, we want Mr. Barnes. They read off all the charges. We want to, we're proposing 8 years. I was like, my mom had come up because my daughter was taken by the police department, right, by the sheriffs. Okay, she got the sheriff and all his deputies. They had CPS come and took my kid, right? The mother of my child was on the property. She got arrested. Okay, so she was taken in, and they took Mackenzie. Well, they charged me also with child endangerment. Okay, so I've got this whole massive thing that I'm walking through, and they're like, yeah, we want to put you in for 8. Within probably 30 days, it was around 30 days to 60 days, I got a call from my lawyer, who used to be the head of the DA of Humboldt County. And he stopped working for the DA and then started, being a criminal attorney. He was like, hey, you're not going to believe this. And be reminded, my mom had come to take care of my daughter when I was going through this. And she is literally warring in the middle of the hallway after the DA told me that they wanted to put me in for 8. This is like, I'm talking like Comanche, straight up out of the, like, savage, bro. Like, dude, like, speaking in,
she hasn't stopped.
She is not playing. She gets in the, I'm not receiving this in the name of the Lord. My son is called. He was born on 7/7/77. I'm declaring, da-da-ba-da-ba, just going, right? And I'm like, Mom, you're embarrassing me. I'm with my head down. Everybody in Humboldt County knows who I am. And it's like, you're walking down people in the courthouse. You see other people that have been in trouble. And I'm just like, I don't know this lady. This is crazy. I actually just talked to her about this the other day, because she's going to be in the Cell of Fear video, which is this video is actually all about the raid and the arrest and stuff. And I was like, Mom, do you remember when you were in the courthouse and you were like warring? And she goes, I remember it was like it was yesterday. There was nobody. She said that there was nobody that was going to take her boy. Like, God had called me, and that's what nobody was going to stop that call, right?
Yeah.
And so I get a call from my attorney, and he's like, hey, the Vegas feds didn't have a warrant coming onto your property, which means they gave the Humboldt County Sheriff Department information based upon the fact that they shouldn't have been there. They developed what's called a falsified warrant, which means they developed that warrant on false grounds.
Yeah.
You're walking. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
Are you like, and I told the Lord, I said, man, God, I'm done. Like, so I sold my house. I sold my glass blowing business. I owned an urban clothing shop on the plaza in Arcata. I sold the urban clothing store. I had a gem and mineral shop. It was like 2 sections. It was like 2 stores in one, and I sold that. And I went to my mom was like, "You're out. Like, I'm taking you to ministry school." And I was like,
I love that first stop.
That's exactly what she did, bro. Like, I actually went to there's a guy named Don Potter, who is actually from Nashville, and he's one of the most. He was a professional, one of the top 3 highest rated flamenco guitar players in the world by the time he was like 15. And then he owned a jazz club in New York and got radically saved. And he was going to worship school here in Reading. And he was actually, what he was doing was he was working with other worship leaders to lead them into their deeper level of calling and anointing. I had no idea why I was even there. And so my mom's like, you're going to this thing. I know who Don Potter is. So I went to it, and the Lord spoke to me. He said, you're going to ministry school. So I went to ministry school for 4 years. And in the midst of that, I got sober. And, I think it's been 18 years since I've done any drugs and 15 years since I've had a drink. And, the journey's been really crazy because the first probably, in 2003, so the shooting was October 2003, right? Yeah. Or that's when the raid was. The shooting was August of 2003. The raid was October. So Christmas rolls around that year, 2003, and I hadn't really fully dedicated my life yet. And I got woken up in the middle of the night, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said, get on your knees. And I was like, what is going on? I was like screaming for my mom. She wouldn't wake up. This is, the night of Christmas after everybody's already asleep and Christmas already happened. And he said, you remember when I told you that I have a call and a destiny, a purpose on your life? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you're a rapper. And I was like, rapper? What is that? Like, I don't write music. He's like, 1 million kids are going to come through the floodgate of righteousness because of your life. And you are going to write lyrics for me. I was like, take me to the psych ward. Like, I didn't know how to process this because I'm like hearing the voice of God.
And this is nothing. You were athletic. You were either athletic or a drug dealer, never a lyricist, never any of that.
No, he put it in me that night. I started writing lyrics the next morning. They did not stop pouring out of me. I didn't even know what to do with it. I was like, I'm filling up these pages with these like prophetic proverbial rhymes. Like, what is going on? And it just didn't stop. It was like, if you look down right here, I'm in my studio. If I look down right here, I've got just from the last, year or two, there's like 30 filled comp books. So imagine like 20 years, I've got containers over here that are just like vaults of lyrics that he's written through me. And I hear him when he talks to me about what he wants to write. And you know what? People can say I'm crazy, but this journey, I started writing, graduated ministry school, and then went to sound engineering school, San Francisco State. They have a really cool engineering program there. And I got to learn from 5 or 6, 7 Grammy winners, all in different fields of the music industry, which was totally a gift because it was a super expensive school. It was like a part of San Francisco State. So you're talking like $12,000 a semester just to be able to go. Right.
Yeah.
And the whole thing got paid for. I didn't even have to pay for it. So
this is funny because Joshua always says, aren't you glad that God loves crazy people? Because
it's mine and Head's story, mine and Head's story is a lot alike because I was living like he was. I just had so much like fame and notoriety and fortune and, all this stuff. And so I go to sound engineering school and then I moved back up to Reading, right? After I'm done with San Francisco State, and that was 2012, I moved back to Reading. My friend calls me and says, hey, I got somebody that you need to meet. And I was like, well, to be honest with you, man, I really I was going through a really, really, really difficult time with now my ex-wife. And there was some stuff that happened that I really don't want to smear her. That won't help. But there were some things that happened where I actually had we weren't going to get through it. There's some lines that were crossed that just couldn't be crossed. We couldn't go back after those decisions were made, so to speak. And so he's like, I'm like, I don't want to meet anybody. And he's like, well, I need you to meet Head. And I was like, Head from Korn? He's like, yeah, you're supposed to meet him. Met Head that day. We went boating for a day. And I was like, okay, so what now? What was I asked God, I go, did you just want me just to meet Brian? Was that what this deal was? And I was really confused. Well, he gets my phone number and calls me later that night. And he says, hey, you and your daughter want to come meet me at IHOP. And I was like, I asked Mackenzie, and I was like, Brian likes sweets. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Oh yeah. I gotta keep that out of my kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah. When he comes to my house, he's like, take going in my pantry and like, and he's funny because when I've been to corn shows with him and stuff, and I'm up in his like little private thing that they build for him every time. And there's like cakes in there, and like I'm like, what? Like you know, we both have this. Both of us like freak. I don't know if you saw the premiere, the sneak peek of the video that's coming out, and he's like crushing a box of Cheez-Its.
Oh,
same thing. I'm like a Cheez-It freak, and so him and I just connected that night, man. And the thing about Brian is, I'm really big on a lot. I think what a lot of people do when people are famous, they in their head they're like, well, what can I like get from this person?
Yeah.
Like what can I do to use them to help advance my life?
Right.
I think because of me already being really comfortable in my skin, I've never asked Brian for anything. I've never been like, yo, dude, can you like get me a record deal and da 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 da.
Right.
It wasn't until Brian called me. Well, I don't want to go into that part yet, but I'll tell you. So Brian and I just developed a relationship, and we're just friends. And that's all I ever really want, and that's still all I ever want in this hour, is to just be genuine and be real with people, and actually, like, it is to truly care about somebody, not because of who they are, not because of what they do, not because of how much they have or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, I actually just want to know the person, and I want to get connected with the heart of that human, and out of that relationship, God can then do what He wants to do with that relationship, right?
Yeah.
So years go by, and him and I, he brought me out to Aftershock with Mackenzie. Janaea is actually born on my son's birthday. So she's born July 6th, 98, and Mackenzie's born 8/29/98. And at the time, Mackenzie and Janaea were kind of just going through their navigational course of being young, right? So Brian and I would just really talk about our kids, right?
Yeah.
And got to the point where in 2017 or 18, I'd come to several events where I'm like sitting on stage, sitting on the ground where Brian's playing guitar and just really watching, 40,000 people do what they're doing. And Brian really just like, I still don't to this day know why he's done for me what he's done for me. I know he loves me and I love him, but time went by, and then my music kept growing and growing and growing. And then finally the Lord goes, hey, I want you to call Brian, and I want you guys to pollinate on a track. And I was like, I don't want to ask him for that. Like, I don't ever want him to think in the back of his head that, oh, I'm just waiting for you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, I get it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, people people can be really weird with that kind of stuff. But I felt like the Lord, He wouldn't leave me alone about it. So I was like, Brian, I've never wanted nothing from you, man, but I really felt like the Lord had shown me that we're supposed to do a track together, and there's something that's going to happen out of our relationship and my style of music and your style of music. He's like, send me the track. And I was like, all right. So I sent him the track, and I didn't hear nothing from him. So for a couple months. And so I just figured that I offended him, honestly. I thought that he was upset with me. And, I was like, Lord, I didn't hear you right. Because I'll be the first one to say, we only see and hear in part. So if I don't hear something right, I'll be the first one to say, hey, either I heard wrong or the timing's not right or whatever. Well, Brian calls and he's like, hey, I'm coming up to Reading. You want to meet up when I'm up in Reading? I'm like, yeah, of course, man. I want to meet up. And so we were putting together this like get together for him. He didn't mention nothing about the track. So I was like, well, he didn't say nothing about the track. I'm not going to bring it up. I heard wrong. Sorry, Lord. Sorry, Brian. Yeah. So we're at the party, and he comes. I didn't even know he was there yet. And he comes up behind me, and he's playing the track that I sent him, and he's singing the hook that he wrote. He's like, yeah. And then he's like, let's go to your studio right now.
Nice.
So I had, the interesting part about this is another place of obedience where God was testing me, kind of like He did with Jeremiah when He's like, what are you about to see right now? He's like an almond branch, right? So He was testing Jeremiah to see if Jeremiah actually heard properly from the Lord. Well, God was like, look, you need to set up all your recording gear because Brian is coming into town and everything needs to be set up properly. And I was like, I don't want to do that, God. It's like, set up your gear. Like, it was like firm. I was like, so I called my boy who was the head of the Sound Audio Engineering Institute. And I was like, Torsten, come set everything up. And he's like, for what? And I was like, I don't know, man. I just feel like something's going to happen with head nine. I'm on my way right now. If I would have not been obedient when Brian would have said, let's go to the studio now, nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
Right?
That's amazing. That's amazing. So we're about to run out of time here, but I want you to, I don't want to miss this point of allowing you to talk a little bit about Noble Poets, but I got to tell you a funny story too, because I had one of those with Head too, where, and I'll spare the details because it's a little private, about a person that was asking for help. And I was like, I went to bed going, no, I'm not asking Brian. That's not the friendship we have. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And I woke up in like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the Holy Spirit was just like, it's okay. You can ask Brian. Yeah. And so I texted him. This is funny. I texted him and I was like, bro, I love you. I don't do this, but this happened 3 o'clock in the morning. Here you go. And so he texts back later on. He goes, okay, I'll check. And he texts back. He goes, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. He goes, I think you heard the Holy Spirit wrong. And I was like, oh, that hurts, dude. And not 2 seconds later, he goes, oh, wait, you're in. He goes, I just got another message.
Go ahead.
Jevon, I got one question for you that has been burning in my brain for the last 60 minutes in your story. And I feel like I should ask this because I'm sure we're going to have people that have suffered abuse in some way, shape, or form. And as I listened to your story, what I heard is a person who, through their most vulnerable years, was quite literally victimized. And yet when I listen to you, you are not a victim.
Right.
And hearing those two things live in your story is so fascinating, because you had horrible things done to you that should not have been done to you. But as you talk, you are not a victim, which is fascinating. And so can you just, because I know our time is running short, but can you help give somebody who may be hearing this, who may have been suffering through the same kind of traumatic childhood? I find it hard to believe that it could ever be as bad, but have gone through abuse. What would you say to them about what is that where your faith, I have to believe, is a catalyst for that dynamic? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is. There's a huge one. There's a couple different things. First off, we don't have to become what happened to us, right? We do not have to become what happened to us, right? Even Yeshua was like, forgive them, Father, for they know what they do. If anybody had a right to be bitter, angry, or have unforgiveness, it was Yeshua, right? Jesus himself.
Yeah.
He still didn't do that, right? So I started to realize, and this took a while to get to this point, but I started to realize, like, look, I get an opportunity to forgive my father. I get an opportunity to forgive my mother because I have bitterness towards her for keeping me in that situation with my dad. Like I said on the other podcast, my mom didn't eat meat for 20 years fasting for my dad. Yeah. He never got the breakthrough. He's still a homeless drug addict, or I think he rents a little room somewhere now, but he's drug addict, alcoholic, right? All day long, every day. So forgiving them out of the sincereness of my heart, for forgiving myself for everything that I've done, and then going to the people that I hurt without expecting anything back from them and making no excuses. I went to my daughter and I said, I'm wrong. It doesn't matter what happened to me. I put you in harm's way. Those were my choices. Nobody chose that for me. And the problem with victims, well, that happened, so now I do this. That I was beaten, there was molestation. So now I'm a psychopath. No, you actually get the opportunity to look at that situation and identify with it, but not become it, and then also use it out of a place of breakthrough to give hope and inspiration to other people.
Outstanding.
Right? Yeah. So that's where that, I have this rhyme where it's like, you could be victor or victim. You could be sick with no symptoms. See what I'm saying? Like there's stuff that I write about that is in that arena, because I want to be victorious. I don't want to be a victim. And victims, what they do is they use life experiences that are justified to keep them in that place. And then they don't get breakthrough out of that place because they don't want to rise up above it. And if we look at the cross, like none of it made any sense. So sometimes I'm like, well, I didn't have to go through all this stuff, but the fact that I did, now we get to use it. The pain has a purpose.
Right. Right.
The cross was painful.
Yeah.
As we all know.
Yeah. And I love the way you started this whole conversation off when you were talking about it and you're about to get into it and you said, I don't want to glamorize all this. And we want people to hear that too, because that's not what it's about. The true miracle is your salvation, is my salvation, is Duffy. It's our salvation that a God would even give up his life for us, the things that we've done. That's the true miracle, and that we get to receive that. So with that, a lot of people think too, well, my story's not as cool as his or not as crazy as his. And I just came up but it doesn't matter. The true miracle is Jesus. So I tell people that all the time. Who cares? So you now get to use those experiences. Tell us a little bit about, as we got a couple minutes here left, about your music. The videos have to do with your story and it's building on itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll cram it up. We'll put it all in. This part I'm pretty good at. So I do the track with Head, right? Relationship gets bigger, okay? Yeah. Then time's going by, and Head calls and he says, hey, just let me know if you need anything. And I was like, okay, well, I need an engineer. So then he got me Joe Rickard, which is the drummer from Red, right? Who engineered Love and Death stuff. Yeah. Then I sent him the project, and he was like, bro, this is so good. Like, your story's crazy. The music's crazy. So relevant. This is what I've been waiting for. So then Head gets me on the phone with Zach Yoshioka, right? Who managed, Zach?
Yeah, I love Zach.
Oh, okay, great. So Zach. So Zach's managing us, and then we get Trevor out of that relationship. I'm like, Head, I don't want to be barking at you, man, but like you've just been such a huge catalyst to helping us. And he was like, he's like, well, what do you need? And I was like, well, I need a curator. And he was like, well, just use my guy. And I was like, well, who's your guy? It's like Trevor. So Trevor's curating, and then out of that place, and we got publicists and blah, blah, blah. So album's done. We put out Never Fit In, and nobody knew who we were in November. So we put out Never Fit In, which is about the childhood trauma abuse. That's on YouTube. Yep. And I've got a team of people that I work with, but it's my story. Yeah. Right? So Caleb sings the hooks, Caleb May, and then I do the lyrics, and we produce the music together. So, and we have one other producer work on a couple other tracks, but Never Fit In dropped in November. Okay. And then Humpty Dumpty, which is one of my favorite songs. It's one of the coolest hip hop songs. It's one of my favorite songs that I've actually ever heard. And that's not me being biased. I just really like the rhythm.
No, it's good. It's good.
So we dropped Humpty Dumpty, and then we dropped Zans, right? And Zans is kind of like the climax of the story, right before, it's the climax before the climax. So we dropped, I think there's some feedback. We dropped then Cell of Fear in June, and we just dropped the EP, The Flaw, okay? So we're going to release 2 EPs, and we're going to release the full LP probably beginning of next year. So we got another EP dropping. Hopefully, we're playing Blue Ridge in Virginia. Which that is another thing that Head did for us without even me asking him for anything. So Blue Ridge, I think. Well, I got the email the other night. They're going to sell 190,000 tickets or something. Wow. So yeah, Tenacious D and all kinds of Alice Cooper's playing, which is good. There's all these different types of music that's going there, but we're Lacey's playing.
Isn't she?
Yeah, Lacey's playing there. Nelly plays right after we do that Saturday night. So if people want to find out what we're doing or get behind what we're doing, it's Noble Poets. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's Noble Poets Music on Instagram, and then Noble Poets on Facebook, and then my Instagram's dirty_white. So if people want to, I've had a lot of people hitting up my DMs, and I always do, and it's mostly people who are walking through trauma. And about 99% of the time, I'm the one responding in those DMs. I'm the one who's giving people light and hope. And I don't care how big or how little or whatever God wants to do with this. I'm always going to be the guy that is going to want to serve, because I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. Yeah. So even to the point of my own internal exhaustion, I will love until I got nothing left in me, and then God will fill me up so I can love some more. So that's the reality of what Noble Poets is doing. we're hitting the climax of the story of this podcast. You know, the next video is really tapping into, you know, the shooting, the raid, you know, my daughter being taken. It's right to the point of before my life gets changed. So we started with nobody knew who we were. And I think I'm just throwing out a random number, and I think it's pretty close, but I think there's like 50,000 views between YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then all the podcasts that I've done. So it's creating awareness to redemption from abuse, and then also redemption from ourselves.
Right.
Right.
That's so good, man. Gosh, now I see why Ryan said we can talk for hours, and we're going to talk for more hours after we get off. And you're not here, and you got to be with him there, so I'm a little jealous. So if you're ever at H-Town, we want you to come hang out with us. We'd love to see you. We'll have to do this again another time as you start to grow this. And man, go visit the Noble Poets on YouTube. Follow them, subscribe to it. It's pretty awesome. Great lyrics. Dive into those lyrics because that's where it touches you. So you've got a gift, and I'm so thankful to have you here. Yeah. So, you got anything before we leave?
It's just I don't know. When's the movie come out?
You're like you're almost. It just lets you know you're moving in the prophetic, because there's been in the last 5 years there's been 20 people that have came and told me specifically that there's going to be a movie done on this, and obviously, you know, God will do that in the time that He wants to do it. You're confirming that again. I mean, it really would be a crazy screenplay, right? And you know, the thing about it is redemption. That's the deal. Like, I didn't stay. Let me just say something. I could have went back with getting my get out of jail free card.
Yeah,
I could have went back to the game.
Yeah,
and been doing within 2 weeks the same thing that I was doing before. But I was like, no, no. We're gonna make a difference.
Yeah,
that's gonna be the goal. So
come on,
beautiful story.
All right, we thank you again. Let me pray us out real quick, man. Lord, thank you so much for Jevon and his story and what you gave him. And golly, Lord, everyone who's in earshot right now and who hears this later on, and Ryan's podcast, any podcast that he gets on, Lord, we just continue to pray for your glory, for your goodness, for your grace, for your mercy, for your awareness, for your hope, to just pour out of him and all through his music. Bless him, Lord, as you already have. I don't even have to ask that. You're doing it, and we're just thankful that we get to be a part of you and seeing that. So we just pray for healing. We pray for hope, and we pray, Lord, for just things to be broken off people and ourselves, Lord. Thank you for his life. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, man. I can't wait to see you again. H-Town, we'd love to hang.
Let's go. Are you guys doing whosoever events out there in Houston too?
We are. We've been doing a few. We actually just had Head Here and Ryan. We did an Easter service in a Wildcatter Saloon. It's a bar. Had 400 plus people there. Dropped the gospel, dropped love. Had 3 secular metal bands playing. Head got on stage and played with them, and I got to sing with them. So we did Falling Away From Me. That was a treat for me. So
so I was supposed to be out there. Were they out seeing you guys when Sonny, Head, Zach were out?
Yep.
So I was supposed to be out there with you guys, and I got COVID 2 days before.
All right. So we'll have another.
I was supposed to be out there dropping the hammer with you guys and just going after it, and I got bedridden. So,
dude, well, we'll keep in touch, because we got one coming up possibly. This is for everyone to hear before we close out here. We got something brewing in November that could be pretty epic. So we'll let you know.
Cool. Very cool, man. Right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and looking forward to meeting you guys in person.
Right on. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. You too.